All right, cool. Thanks, guys. We appreciate you guys coming on out to Move United's education conference. I'm Dane.
And I'm Nick Pearce.
Cool. We are both representing New Ability, and New Ability is an adaptive exercise facility in Denver, Colorado, who serves the greater paralysis community. Our presentation is going to be basically demonstrating Nick's experience, but also the priority and the emphasis of why returning to recreation after an injury is so important, and what we can expect from that kind of philosophy moving forward, and how we can help more people get to that point of returning to a sport they love. Cool. So I'll kind of dive into this here, guys. So personal barriers and just barriers in general to returning to recreation. We have the personal, and then we have the environmental barriers. First things first, when somebody gets injured, a spinal cord injury in particular, to the physical deconditioning and then just the general process of learning how to live again from a wheelchair is the biggest hurdle to be able to get past too. The hospital-associated deconditioning too is going to incorporate a lot of just the down-regulation of their capacities that they have too. And really it presents the first barrier of how do we get past that barrier to push them back into a position where they're actually going to be able to perform to a capacity that they like. There's also medication complications, discharge guidelines, secondary health complications, skin, blood pressure, thermoregulation, all that fun stuff. And then outside of that, there's environmental barriers too. So transportation, accessible facilities, correct modalities, common grounds, all those different things too. So Nick, I wanted to get a little bit more of an experience from you on what you first felt when you first got out of the hospital.
Yeah, so when I first was released from rehab, obviously some of the first barriers that you encounter at home, if your house isn't totally adapted for you, those are the first barriers. But getting back into the community is also another huge barrier. I think some of the barriers that I first encountered were not just physical, but also as far as networking and knowing what's available to us out there. There's nowhere really to find a bunch of information that's all located in one place, or at least that's very advertised and well known. So you kind of have to figure it out and find someone who's already embraced into the community. And then that's how you hear about places like New Ability and other rehab places that push for better strength and conditioning and health as well. So for me, obviously, and I can't even emphasize the importance of this. And it's a sad deal that Craig changed the way they operate there and use that gym for physical therapy instead. And I know that sounds rough, but I can't emphasize how important it was while in rehab to be introduced to all of these things. Mm-hmm. Even if I wasn't susceptible to it at the time, because all that I was going through at the time, I didn't want anything to do with other people in wheelchairs. I thought I was going to walk again. I'm going back to my normal life, which obviously is not the case for most of us. Once I saw rugby, I met a couple guys. That was the first introduction, right? And when I went there to watch rugby, not only did I see rugby, but I got to see what these guys look like in their everyday lives, what they look like in their normal day chairs, what their day chairs look like in comparison to the ones I'm having. And coming from a physical background, as far as fighting and being in athletic shape, I thought I was going to jump in a rugby chair and kick everybody's ass. And that was definitely not the case either. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But again, to plant that seed in someone early on is vital. Because even if they don't accept it now, when they do finally come around to accept that, they know what's available to them. And that's hugely important. The other barriers that I encountered for me personally was like, I lived in South Dakota. There's nothing there. So again, it comes back to being introduced to this stuff early on. Introducing people and places and things, and just knowing that they're there. The other thing is having a community and living in a place that embraces people with disabilities. Denver and Colorado, thankfully, are very big on that. We're one of the best places to live as far as being with a disability and with a chair. So when we talk about barriers, I think a lot of the barriers are information and knowledge. They don't teach you these. They teach you when you're in rehab. They teach you like how to like get home and just barely take care of yourself. That's literally it.
Mm-hmm.
The rest, as far as like what you're gonna do with your life after that, is not. I mean, they have rec therapy, but it's just not. It's not the same, right?
Yeah.
But again, barriers obviously are our networking information, knowing about it, where to look, the people, and then obviously the next barriers would be how to obtain the equipment you need,
Mm-hmm.
how to get to where you need to be, funding, because I don't know, for us, a rugby chair is 10 to 12 grand. An average person living on SSI is nowhere near going to ever be able to afford that.
Mm-hmm.
So grants are hugely important to us, knowing where to apply for those. Um, uh, other barriers, uh, other barriers are usually like, I don't know, ourselves and our stubbornness to get out there. So I think, I don't know, I think that then obviously I haven't even brought up the secondary shit yet,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I think like once you, I know this sounds fucking crazy, but sorry, I know this sounds crazy, but once you get back to living again, you almost forget about some of those secondary things,
Mm-hmm.
which is the craziest. People ask me about it, and I'm like, I haven't even thought about a skin tool or any of that stuff in a long time. So.
And I think that point resonates, wholeheartedly too, because the reality is you're focusing towards performance, focusing back to your identity again. So those things that you had mentioned that are secondary just fall to the wayside because your priority is still pushing towards performance, pushing towards your personal growth.
Absolutely.
Getting back to the identity that you've developed for yourself up to your injury point and then redeveloped again too, which is that second affirming process.
I think, and you're right. At first, it is just about yourself, like taking care of yourself. But eventually, you get strong enough to where you start looking at other options, right?
Mm-hmm.
You start looking for things that you're gonna love. And another thing that's an barrier is for people with quadriplegia. There's literally one sport for us: rugby. That's it, and that's heading away from us as well because of how high performance it's starting to push quadriplegics out because they can't keep up with amputees and
that is a massive point I want you to emphasize too. And I think just a secondary to kind of I guess back Nick's point too is that was one of the reflections points of how this presentation was generated because we came here last year. We work almost, I would say well over 60% of our time spent working with quadriplegics on a one-on-one basis. And just like Nick said, the reality is there only is wheelchair rugby for quadriplegics. And even with that, it's starting to get taken away and kind of, prioritized to different disabilities too. The other thing that we at New Ability believe too is that exercise and, cardiovascular training, that effectively is the recreation for quadriplegics at certain points when the aggressive tendencies of rugby and the clashing and the functions necessary for rugby aren't met to based off of just the huge span of disabilities variety that we're going to have with cervical spine injuries. So, being able to understand that exercise is a recreation for this population, for quadriplegics, is something that we want to push toward. But you also see too, guys, like I identified the personal environmental barriers. Nick identified the knowledge barriers too, but also the exposure barriers. If you get exposed quickly when you're in rehab to these different sports, it's going to change your outlook moving forward after the fact, where you can have a dual focus of regaining as much function as possible while still pursuing these different avenues that are going to give you a sense of self-esteem building and identity, but give you a common ground with other individuals who have disabilities who you want to grow with.
Yeah, to reiterate on that, I think that I hesitate to use the word that exercise is recreation because for us, most of us, it's a necessity, right? I mean, if we're not, I get that working out is healthy, but it's also a lot more motivating if you're working towards something, right? If you're on a team, you're playing sports, you're working for something, to a goal. But exercise being in a chair is not just recreation, but it's also a necessity as far as blood flow, less skin sores, you're stronger for transfers, you're more confident, and there's so much that goes into just having a mindset that will keep you healthy as well, right? You are what you believe, right? And so if you think you're living healthy, and if you believe that you're being healthy and you're living and you're getting that cardio and you're lifting, you're going to be healthier just overall. If you're living that way. So that in the lack of, like, it's when you have a disability, it's not like some of us do, but it's very uncomfortable. It's like going to a regular gym. That's very hard to do for multiple reasons. Social reasons. Social reasons, my number one. I hate the attention I get at a regular gym. I hate that when I go there, people want to come up to me and shake my hand just because I'm doing what they're doing. It's like, bro, like, I'm just here to work out. So what I love about adaptive gyms is that they are catered to people with disabilities, and they have the time and knowledge put into building those adaptive exercises that are built for us. So we're not trying to spend all these times figuring out how we can do something. So I think that's huge. And then again, like, I can't even emphasize enough again how important it is to introduce these things early on. Sam is a perfect example, right? I truly believe in my heart of hearts that if we could have caught Sam 4 or 5 years earlier, would have been a different outcome.
Absolutely.
I think we just caught him too late. And by then, the damage is already done. The lifestyle and everything's already been set.
Yeah, those habits are already in their ways to the expectations that he has of himself, but also what he can do and what he can perform up to. And then also the community too, the rugby guys that you guys have cultivated and the community that you've been able to employ would easily be able to help set the standard early on rather than after the fact. And you guys still had a massive impact on him during the time that you had with him too. But just like Nick was saying too, the earlier we're able to get these exposures, like all of Move United is doing with this conference right here, the better the outcomes be too. So finding a modality and a sport to get into and pairing that with exercise, it's this whole well-rounded cycle that's able to play into a lot of long-term longevity aspects too. We talked about a lot there, guys, too. The biggest points that we want to make on that too is there's a lot of barriers that come up with returning to recreation after an injury, particularly a spinal cord injury. A lot of stuff that Nick talked about getting information quickly, getting exposure fast, and then stuff that I was talking about, personal environmental barriers too. Those are all things that need to be addressed that are incredibly important. But to move forward into the next kind of phase here too, it just gives a step-by-step process of what I guess a typical discharge process look like to be able to get into recreation. So you have your hospitalization too. That's where everything's getting taken care of. You got your inpatient care. Again, more things are getting seen. You're seeing doctors all the time. You're doing your rehab. You get discharged. Then just like Nick said, there's that immediate time of adapting your home and your lifestyle to just accommodate for the first base to be met. Meeting your basic needs, understanding how do you take care of yourself in a world that's not built for somebody with, who's a wheelchair user. From there, you're going to want to recognize that, it's probably those needs are met and we can go ahead and start building yourself back up to, the person that we know we can be and we want to be too. And that's where the self-esteem comes into play too. And a lot of that self-esteem building can easily, quickly, or rather be expedited, I should say, by being on a sports team and being able to compete with yourself from yesterday, but also understand this is how this person does this transfer. This is how they're able to modify this home gym, and all these different things that'll come up that are huge points of learning for anybody who's new to an injury too. So being able to find that team is absolutely essential. This right here, goals and objectives too. This is a fun little graphic that I made too. That was just find an activity that you enjoy as the first step. So if you played basketball before you got hurt, maybe find a basketball team. Nick's example is he was a UFC fighter too. So he comes into the gym and he boxes too. He hits our heavy bag. He hits the speed bag when he can. But that's a pretty masculine testosterone, aggressive style of, modality too. So he found rugby that really associated very well with the identity that he had cultivated before his injury, and that helped him set a goal for what he wanted to achieve after too. So using Nick as an example right there, he did a great job of being able to find the right activity. From there, he communicated with others on how to improve that activity too. So he comes into the gym, he does the arm bike for hand speed, he's pushing weight around, he's doing the dip presses. I saw him the other day using a sled, a 93-pound sled, dragging that thing around to try to help with wheelchair propulsion so he can be faster on the court. With that too, he's talking to the other team members that he has to be able to say, you ever heard about wheelchair rugby? You ever want to come through and just try it on out till I got an extra chair for you? Just pop on over. I'll get you hooked up with all the guys. We've got some people to be able to help on out too. But then from there, it's, breaking down the motions that are important for his performance on the court too. So pushing, pulling, rotating, hinging, carrying, all of those are different modalities and different exercise techniques that we can use to help improve performance. And then just on a bias renewability too, is finding a facility where you feel like you can be a part of a group and you can practice these skill sets in an open platform, and sometimes fail safely. Is one of the big things that we always like to encourage people to do, because the safety of facility, if you fall out of your chair, you're going to have somebody to get you back into it. If a weight's too heavy too and you start to tip off to the side, you're going to be safe still too. So these are just kind of general ways to be able to break down the process of getting back into recreation here. But the stuff that Nick talked about before of the value of recreation, I want him to elaborate a little bit more on the identity, but also the community you fostered with your rugby team.
Absolutely. So when you're initially when you first suffer an injury, a catastrophic injury, obviously the first thing that does get taken away from you is your identity, because everything you thought you were, the person you thought you were, the life you thought you were leading took a dramatic turn. So finding who you are again is so very important, and it's a hard thing to do because you don't know what you're capable of, and oftentimes we underestimate ourselves. So finding that identity, you find your sense of, and I'm going to tie these two together, because finding your identity comes through that sense of community, right? Finding those people like you, finding those for me, it was finding other assholes in wheelchairs, right? Like, those are my people. And once you find those people, you start and finding the things you love again. The biggest thing is if you are an athletic person, defined by your physical attributes before you were hurt, it's going to play a big role on your identity and how that affects you. So therefore, getting active again, if you were an athletic person, an active person before, is so vitally important. And not only that, but when you find those groups, just like a regular gym, you want to find somewhere you're comfortable at, where, like Dane suggested, where you're not scared to fail. Because if you're scared to fail, you're not going to take chances, you're not going to push yourself, you're going to play safe all the time. Finding that place where you're comfortable enough to do those things, and also where the trainers and the staff are educated and have put the time in to figure these things out. Like adaptive exercises, there's no book on this. Like this is something, a brand new chapter, right? So finding those places is huge. Finding your community, whether it be which is huge through sport. Maybe some people aren't always into sports, but sport, for those of us in the community, it teaches independence, camaraderie, confidence is huge, how to travel and be independent. But on top of all that, you need to be strong enough to be able to do all those things. And that takes adaptive exercises.
Yeah, absolutely. The value of recreation cannot be overstated. Identity and community are two things that's why when we did sports back in high school and middle school and everything like that, it's what you did it for, is to be able to develop your identity and form a community that you're really proud of being with too. This next slide right here, guys, is just all the adaptive recreational activities that we have really across the board. So at the top right there, I have rugby, and I have hyphen for best for quadriplegics. Reality of what that statement should be is it's only for quadriplegics. Everything else below that is all for full hand function and some level of core function too. I guess skiing could be something that we could see some quadriplegics do in the future too. Scuba diving also. Maybe some mountain biking too, depending on thumb function. But the reality is all those recreational activities have a massive barrier in front of them too, and that's strength, cardiovascular health, endurance, mobility, body mass, other barriers, location, equipment, yada yada yada. So we really want to continue to put emphasis on rugby being for quadriplegics, but just like Nick had said, of having exercise being this really universal a modality and principle that everybody who is involved in a recreational activity can employ, but also even if you're not able to get into a sport as a quadriplegic, being able to use exercise as that recreation for yourself, and that absolutely mandatory recreation is incredibly important too. I had mentioned a little bit before about the value of recreation. That's on a personal level. That's what the person feels. That's what their community feels. This is more so on a monetary side of things too. So just two international models of disability to New Zealand and Sweden both have really incredible programs. I'm going to kind of run through this slide right here because it's a lot of words, but the reality is both of these countries have policies for disability recreation and disability strategies. Both of them are, with this New Zealand, they have a no exception strategies to be able to help individuals, regardless of ability, participate in physical activity. And, the outcomes from that are pretty incredible. And again, this is the value of recreation here too. In New Zealand in particular, 24% of individuals with disabilities engage in recreation or a sport each week. From there, 20% reduction in healthcare costs for active participants too, which is, quite literally hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars too, depending on the population they're working with. And then from there too, we're offsetting even more mental health complications for a reduction in depression and anxiety. And that comes from the community you're associated with too. The healthcare reductions definitely have a token with that too, but that's from you exercising, from you pushing yourself, from you exploring these different territories. And, in comparison to Sweden's done a very similar thing. We have a 40% increase in adaptive sports over a decade, 150 million euro annual savings in healthcare expenditure too. If you extrapolate that over a 20-year period, you're talking tens of billions of dollars, or maybe just, single billions of dollars, but still it starts with a B. And then from there too, you have a decrease in incidence of loneliness, mental health complications too. So I guess it is a win-win no matter way you spin it too on the value of recreation, of getting into it on a personal level, on a community level, but also on a fiscal monetary side of things too. It just makes sense. This is just another statistic to be able to show the overall participation of the United States versus Sweden and New Zealand. 17% versus 24 or 70%. So, participation barriers, we got a lot of high barriers, particularly in those rural areas like Nick had mentioned in South Dakota. Not a whole lot of opportunity for him. The mental health improvements, the healthcare costs are all drastic. And that's our goal with this presentation, is to be able to put a priority on exercise being a modality that should be funded by the state or by the federal government if at all possible too, because we're going to be able to offset a lot of secondary health complications for the mobility conditions that we're working with. But from there, we're really able to see a huge uptick in mental health too, which is something that is becoming more and more talked about. So this right here, I'm going to go back to Nick on this one here, more of the value of recreation on 5 different categories too. So Nick.
So value of recreation, what's first? We got physical health and function. I mean, that pretty much explains it all right there. But obviously, you want to be stronger for life in general. But we also know that being stronger and healthier just leads to overall better quality of life, less illness, less injuries, less everything, less depression, and all that stuff. It also motivates you to live a better life as well, have a better mental state and all of that. Sorry, I left my glasses and got home. I was like, purpose and motivation. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we're all looking for, is that purpose and motivation. So when we have a purpose, especially when it comes to recreation and sports, we have something we're working towards and something we're trying to get better at physically and mentally. Mental health and emotional well-being, like I just said, when you're living healthier and you have a sense of community and a sense of purpose, your mental health and emotional well-being, especially after traumatic injury, it just improves when you find that community and you start living. I call it living again, but that's ultimately what it is living a healthy life and all of that. Social connection and support. Building a community is probably, for me, it was the number one thing that I could do. I knew what rugby did for me and how it changed my life, so I wanted to be able to provide that for others. It motivated me to be independent and confident and work towards something. It motivated me to find a place like New Ability to where I could get stronger for those things, for the recreation and sports that I want to play. So it's all huge. And again, it just leads to overall better quality of life in general. You hit a lot though with the less. I mean, it's kind of like the whole massage and chiropractic, like the healthy you. I mean, we push healthy lifestyles for able-bodied people all the time. It's all over the place. Everybody carries water bottles now and all that shit. It's twice as vital for people with disabilities to get exercise and recreation. And it's not just vital for them personally, but it should be vital for our society as a whole, because it reduces the cost of everything. So even in the sense of obesity, depression, like you said, purpose and motivation.
Mm-hmm.
So all those things are huge.
Yeah,
Very
and I think
huge.
Nick too. A huge aspect that we work on at New Ability too is a lot of these preventative health measures too. Adaptive sports and recreation are preventative health measures for the disabled population too, and that cannot be overstated, because, like Nick said, all of these categories right here come into play to be able to give a purpose and motivation to get your butt up out of your bed and get to the gym and start working out, because you have a reason to do it. You're able to have a more clear mindset. Your emotional regulation's in a better spot. You have a much better experience understanding how to navigate and maneuver the world, and you're more inclined and prone to trying new things that could have massive value for you, but are a little scary at first too. So that's, again, the value of recreation cannot be overstated with this population too, because of every aspect that comes into play too. So re-engagement strategies, these are just some things that we thought of that could be a way for everybody in this crowd right here to help an individual with a disability get back into a sport. So step one, just jump right back on into basically find a sports team you want to be with, and you just to show up at a practice. One of the best ways to start is just by start doing it too. And you kind of figure things out as you need to figure things out. You ask questions, you be humble, you have humility. And like Nick had that example he gave of wheelchair rugby right after he had broken his neck, had expectation he was going to be really good, very humbling experience too. But I hope you want to make that as a driving factor for them to improve, rather than that discouraging factor of, I'm never going to get any better at this here. There's so much I need to build back up on. It's a back and forth process on that.
I just want to get this on the recording. And along those lines, those of us who have been injured for a while and we have found our purpose, we found our sports, we found our recreation. I don't say this lightly, it is our duty to advocate, not only advocate, but find those people who need this stuff. It has become my duty to, like Dane mentioned earlier, I immediately start hunting down people for rugby. I don't do it because I need players. I do it because I know they need it. They need it. I don't need players. I'm not looking for the next all-star. I know how important it is. And so again, I just want to go back to that. It's very important for us to not only advocate, but to be accepting of people. I've seen other teams that didn't accept new players, and I don't want to say accept, but obviously didn't make them feel welcome, right? And I think it's very important that we find, even if they're not the top level player, find them something to do and be a part of that community. That is so huge. That comes before winning or anything else.
Absolutely. Having that team manager, or having that spokesperson, having that person who's kind of working to develop their process is huge. And that kind of works into the next strategy too, of building back up too, of finding a gym, finding a place, location that you're able to start that process of the conditioning process of building your strength back up, and then getting that self-esteem built back to a point where you're ready to take on that next challenge too. And then the other one too is take your time and just observe. And we've had plenty of clients, especially on Nick's rugby team too. Carlos is a great example in my eyes. You guys don't know Carlos, but he's somebody who worked out at the gym for years too. And then one day he was just like, I should try this rugby thing out too. And has been seemingly a damn good player too, but also just an incredible good friend, and has been a valuable resource for the team too.
Absolutely. So, and through all of this, I mean, it just goes to say that, not only are you learning how to live in recreation, but you're learning all those things, with us being in disability life with Social Security and all of that, and whether you're on Medicaid, Medicare, all these things, you need someone to almost to show you how to jump through all those hoops. And so not only are you finding this when you find your recreation, but you're finding that information as well, the little tips and tricks of how to get through the system, because you found the people who've already done it. So there's that aspect of it too that's probably not even mentioned a lot, right? Just the finding how to deal with life on the other hand of things,
Yeah, absolutely. Sweet. Well, guys, that's all the time that we have here too. If there's anything that you guys can do to kind of take away the messages that we have here too, is that, helping individuals find a recreation for them after an injury, after a disability occurs, is one of the best things that we can do for them at any given point in time. So like Nick had said, exposing them early on to, hey, if you ever want to come and try out wheelchair rugby or try out wheelchair basketball, or you want to go, cycling with me at some point in the time, or you just want to go push around the park, just starting that initial process of being able to build the identity, the self-esteem, the reformation of your identity it cannot be overstated too. And the value of recreation too isn't just on a personal level. It's massively important on a personal level too, but on a society, on a fiscal, on a monetary level too. It's demonstrated by New Zealand and Sweden that when you put these programs in place and you make them accessible, you see massive changes in the way the economy can run. And then it really is, I'm honestly understanding some of these things too, because when you get people doing these types of tasks and their recreations going, they're looking at jobs, they're looking at community involvement, they're looking at how to support another person. Just like Nick did, he's looking at how to build a rugby team up from scratch. Those are things that create these legacy moments that people can really fulfill everything that they have to offer this planet and for themselves, so that they're incredibly proud. They have a lot of confidence, and they've created something that's long lasting, that's true to their identity too. So guys, thank you so much too. If you guys need to know any or have any questions, feel free to come up. My email's listed up there too. Nick's got business cards too for his rugby or whatever we got for you. Social media maybe.
Yeah, bring some good stuff. I'll bring I'll bring some swag, man. I ordered a bunch of stuff, so I'll bring all that as well.
Cool. Awesome.
I did want to mention just along that is that people with disabilities are still the most marginalized group out there, right? If we as a society, we don't encourage them. We want to play it safe and all that. So I think it's so very important that these networking in these places are out here. And the other reason these other countries do it, and this is just off of this, but the other reason these other countries are doing so well is because they promote people with disabilities. Mm-hmm. They promote their sport, and we're just now catching up. The United States is just now with the Paralympics and everything else. We're just now catching up. But at the end of the day, sport doesn't give a shit. Sport doesn't care who you are. Sport doesn't give a shit about your disability. It's competition, and it's getting back to living again in that life. And